Episode 8 of The Messenger, the Rachel Cancer Scam. Previously on The Messenger, you learned about the fake pregnancy and the miscarriage, the ashes she brought home, and still to this day sit in an urn in my home, steps from where I am right now. You also learned about my spending months in California, uprooting my life, and that treatment for stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma that was due to start. Now, after the mandatory grief counseling appointment, Rachel had to see her own oncologist, where she waited nervously outside his office to see him. She claimed to have overheard him on the phone in a rather urgent conversation with a doctor from MD Anderson that was brought in to assist in her case. His name was Dr. Hightower, and you'll hear me reference him during this story, his frequent frightening words and his warnings. The very fictional Dr. Hightower would take a lead role in Rachel's scam and to keeping me from her. She would tell me that she heard the two men discussing something in a heated manner. She heard her own oncologist say if you're planning on using doxorubicin, she's dead. If you give her a full dose of that with her existing heart condition, she won't make it through the weekend. She indicated that Hightower said that if we wanted her to live, we'd need to beat this cancer, and in order to beat it, she was going to have to take the doxorubicin. He would consider possibly splitting it up or slowing it down. But beyond that, he would say, "We do what I say." As she shared this story with me, my heart sank, and those words hung heavy in the air. It appeared so very clear to me that her situation was dire, overshadowed by the urgent warning from Dr. Hightower. We had our evening in Santa Barbara on May 4th, 2022. It was the day before treatment started. It was great. It was amazing to see her. We got our spot at the Hotel Santa Barbara, room 217, went out for some sushi and some sake. And when we returned to the hotel, we were exhausted, emotionally drained. The thought of her starting treatment the next day also loomed heavily. As we laid in bed, at one point I felt her grip me like never before. Her fingers digging into the back of my neck and my head, our foreheads pressed together. I could feel her trembling. I could hear her quiet sobs. It felt like she was terrified to let me go. I said, "Talk to me," knowing full well her fear was overwhelming. Stage 4 cancer, brutal treatments ahead, heart complications, and the looming separation. We were facing all the things, as the saying goes. Her crying intensified. Tears were streaming down her cheeks and onto my face and my hands. I tried to pull back to comfort her, but she held me even tighter. Minutes stretched into what felt like an eternity. Her anguish and emotion was palpable in the silence. Finally, she began to calm, and I let a few moments pass. And I said, "What was that?" I wanted to understand. And she said, "I'll tell you one day." She kind of murmured that, her voice raw with emotion. She said, "But not today. I love you. I need to rest." She closed her eyes, seeking peace amidst the storm, I suppose, leaving me with unanswered questions and a heart heavy with concern. During her hospital stay, I referred quite a bit to that hug. I would just say, the hug. She claimed to be willing to give anything to feel that again, to be wrapped up in my arms. Stunned at the sequence of events and her continued bad luck in life, to be stuck in the hospital in protective isolation after finally feeling love in a way she had only dreamt of, according to her. Uttering these words back to you now, this is where there's humiliation, embarrassment, and honestly some anger, if I'm being honest. I fell for every word, for every lie, and all of that manipulation. After she was exposed, after the truth was out, a year and a half later, I said, "Tell me about the hug in Santa Barbara the night before treatment. That hug, it was because you knew you wouldn't ever see me again, wasn't it?" And she said, yeah, I was planning my own suicide. What I did to you at that point, I had no idea how bad it would honestly get. Using suicide, those threats, was a tactic that she wielded frequently. It's a trick straight out of the Narcissist Handbook. She used it twice before, early on in our relationship about her youngest daughter. I told you about that, when she allegedly ingested a bunch of pills the week before Thanksgiving in 2021. And she also pulled that again while she was working at the airport. It was part of a lie that she told her coworkers to gain favor and sympathy about daughter number 2. She used it so often with me during the hospital stay. She would often say that she wanted the DNR put back into place so she could just let go next time something happened to her heart. She actually asked repeatedly, she told me, for MAID paperwork. Again, MAID is the acronym for Medical Assistance in Dying. And after she was exposed, she used suicide a lot in our conversations, weekly, sometimes even daily. I'd see the words she would type. I don't want to be here. The girls would be better off without me. My own family hates me. It was a grand performance. I have texts from her where she would talk about her declining mental health after she was exposed, and that everyone in her life would be better off just with her gone. She said that to me on multiple occasions. Told me that she had begun the process of getting her affairs in order. My friend Agent Grasso said to me, narcissistic people don't kill themselves. They're the cockroaches of the world who live forever. They're 100% convinced that there's always another talk track to success right around the corner. So think about this for a second. Just close your eyes. Imagine we have that hug, the single most incredible hug that I've ever experienced. And instead of me pulling away and saying, talk to me, I pull away with a puzzled look on my face. And I say, why? Why did you do that? And the camera pans down, and a knife has been plunged into my gut. You know, that would have been better in a way. I would not have had to deal with 18 months of lies and gaslighting and having my fucking life torn apart by this thoughtless human being who had a man in front of her that would have laid down his life for her. I dedicated every single day of my life to helping her. And all the while, she was living her life, gallivanting around the globe, taking her kids to softball and volleyball, having dinner, hanging out with Mark and whoever else. I was on hold, in my home. It was like some self-administered house arrest. Stabbed me in the gut. It may have been the more humane thing to do. The initial chemo treatment on May 5th, 2022 went fine. But within days, she began to have heart issues and was rushed by ambulance to the hospital. Just a few days before my birthday in the middle of the month, we were due to go to Disneyland. I had never been. I still haven't been. She wanted to leave the hospital. Wanted to disconnect, she said, just to have me come get her. Let's go. She also had the daughter formerly known as Madison's senior high school graduation coming up within days of that. She claimed she wanted out of the hospital now. Eventually, she got out. She claimed that she was released around June 2nd of 2022. But that alleged release date meant that she would miss our Disney trip, which she did. And she would also miss her daughter Madison's graduation. She pretended to be devastated. But as it turns out, the only thing she missed was the trip to Disney, because she was never in the hospital. Something interesting happened during that time. On the day of Madison's graduation, out of nowhere, her location services started working. I said something about it. I saw it on the top of our message. It said that Rachel's in Templeton. And she said, "Oh, you can see that." And I said, "I can." And her excuse was that she had put an air tag in her car for Madison. And she said, "Oh, that must just be the air tag sharing with you. It uses my Apple ID." She pretended to be sleeping a lot during her days at home during this time, claimed that there was another doctor involved in her case by the name of Dr. Steele, a cardiologist, part of that MD Anderson team. And he wanted her heart to rest, so he allegedly kept her on meds that had her sleeping nearly around the clock, only up for a couple of hours a day, asleep maybe 20, 23 hours a day. She referred to herself as zombie wife. She would say, "Oh, I miss you so much. I love you. I wish I could stay awake to talk to you." More of those lies. Excuses, because she was busy living her other life at the same time. The cancer-free life. Kids, softball, volleyball, carpooling, Uber mom, and her other role, wife and cheater. Small-town crime can be horrific. Some of the darkest stories, the most chilling and heinous murders happen where you least expect it. In small towns, these crimes often get overlooked, but not on True Crime Cast, where these cases are put in the spotlight. Join hosts Jamie and John every week as they uncover chilling cases from notorious murders that shook the world to small-town mysteries that have flown under the radar until now. Get ready for gripping storytelling, spine-tingling details, and cases you've yet to hear about. True Crime Cast, wherever you get your podcasts. Brought to you by Stoveleg Media. This all leads up to the big hospital stay, that 18-month hospital stay. And here's how that started. On the morning of June 5th, 2022, I received a text from her that sent chills down my spine. She described waking up feeling as if she had had a stroke and a heart attack. Symptoms cascading, a tingling left arm, chest pain, and more indicating a possible TIA or mini stroke. Her heart rate soared to 305, and it was climbing. I was gripped with fear. I said, "Call 911 or I will." She said, "I called the nurse, and they're sending an ambulance." I said, "Keep me posted, I'm right here." I reassured her, even though I was miles and miles away. Several hundred miles away, 400 miles away. I stayed tethered to my phone, anxiously awaiting updates. And then she confessed, "I don't want to go back to the hospital." I said, "You have to go. Without medical attention, you won't survive this. A heart attack, a stroke, the high heart rate." I pleaded with her. And she said, "Once you go in, you never get to leave." It was a haunting statement that echoed in my mind for months to come. And while I was waiting for her to give me the news that the ambulance had arrived, I sat with the phone between my feet, my head in my hands, leaning over to catch every message. Each update was a lifeline, each delay agonizing. I prayed like crazy for the ambulance's arrival. And eventually, it would get there, according to Rachel. And then at one point, she texted that she was safely in the ER at French Hospital. And little did I know that this would mark the beginning of this entire ordeal of her in the hospital, a chapter in a saga of deception and manipulation that would unfold in the 18 months to come. And her words lingered ominously. Once you go into the hospital, you never get to leave. During that first week in the hospital, Rachel told me about Dr. Holt, who would serve as her main doctor. Also, Rachel assured me that her 12-year-old daughter would continue to communicate with me through Words with Friends on her iPod, which we spent much time on. Rachel didn't allow her to have a phone, so we would do that through words. We talked a lot. She was a source of information. really spent much time consoling and counseling each other. Remember that CPS case was still open, and she told me that the hospital will allow her to stay with Rachel in her room. Now, in the aftermath of the revelation of the truth coming out, the truth sliced through the fabric of this story and me like a scalpel. There had never been a CPS investigation looming over Rachel's life or that daughter at that time. This daughter she had tearfully claimed to be protecting. The girl I had spent countless hours consoling through words was a phantom, a figment of Rachel's deceitful imagination. She traded on her real daughter, in a sense, to create this version for her own story. Rachel was so skillful in gaining my empathy and compassion. She tied up my heart and my affections, the affections that were meant for her daughter, a child who was, in fact, to me, very real. This version of her daughter existed only in her fabricated world. Every word that was typed, every virtual hug offered, was built on a lie, so carefully crafted that it pierced not just my trust, but also the essence of the bond that I shared or thought I shared with this girl. And in the end, it's something I think I ended up hating her for in a way. An insult to injury, Dr. Holt was not a doctor at French Hospital either. She took a real doctor and made him into another figure in her fabricated story. She had me thinking I was talking to her doctor, and there never was a Dr. Holt. She made him up. The anguish of betrayal mingled with disbelief of being played. It left scars that ran so much deeper than words in a podcast or some journal could even adequately tell you. I spoke with her daughter eventually, that young daughter. Actually spoke to all four daughters after Rachel was exposed. I was a part of a family meeting, if you can believe that, and I will discuss that conversation on a future episode. Through some digging, I did end up finding the real Dr. Holt one day, and I called his office and left a lengthy voicemail. This may or may not make sense to you at the moment. I suppose after you hear what I went through with Holt, it'll resonate more. But when he called me back and I saw his name come up on my phone, I got choked up. I thought about what I would say, what I would share. And I had waited so long at that point to hear his voice. He was a source of information for things that you have yet to hear about. When I answered that phone, he said, "I picked up your message and I've never heard of Rachel. Obviously, I'm a doctor, but I don't practice or have hospital privileges anywhere in the SLO area." We spoke for about 10 minutes or so. He apologized, really for nothing, for my trouble, I suppose. And I think the real Dr. Holt is actually a compassionate healthcare provider, just not for Rachel. And as far as our story and timeline goes, Dr. Holt didn't begin to communicate with me for a year into the hospital stay. It would be May of 2023 when I would first receive a message from him. Holt and his importance to the scam can't be overlooked in this. What she did with him, what she had him say and do during the course of this story, is preposterous. I have a lawyer friend that said to me at one point, "There's a term in the law that applies here, and that is intentional infliction of emotional distress." I'm going to add another layer of raw truth to this narrative here. Rachel never anticipated that I'd confront her lies head on, or that I'd dare to expose any of this. It's likely that she believed her fabrications would run me off. She'd get me to tap out, as we say in the martial arts world. She thought that her deceptions were safe from the light of the truth, and for sure from the internet and the podcast world. It is somewhat entertaining to me, the fact that I'm sharing this tale with you. I'm certainly seen by her as the ultimate betrayer. It's almost as if in her own mind that it was okay for her to lie to me, but the very act of revealing her deceit and sociopathic and pathological behavior is viewed as a betrayal by her. I think there comes a point where silence becomes complicity, where turning a blind eye to falsehoods becomes this act of injustice in a way. And in me, unveiling the truth, no matter how painful or unsettling it is, it's become not just a choice, but a moral imperative. And so despite the consequences, I choose honesty over silence, and clarity over confusion. And trust me, it's humiliating as fuck to share all of this with you. And in doing this, I'm able to reclaim some semblance of truth and integrity in a narrative which is completely overshadowed by deceit. So, with all that being said, for those of you with scorecards, you should now produce a scorecard, a new one, labeled Cast of Characters. So far, we have Rachel playing her youngest daughter, and Dr. Holt, and herself, all three roles. This might just be Rachel's most exhausting role in a scam yet. Anyway, back to the story. This is early days of her big stay in the hospital for the fake cancer, June of 2022. During this time, and over the months that would follow, she was sending me Photoshopped pictures of herself. No hair, looking sick, suffering from edema and kidney failure. She was keeping a daily health diary for me as well, an online journal, shared notes for you Apple folks. She claimed that she was sick, stage 4 cancer, a severely compromised heart, and it's one of those things, if you haven't been close to someone who's had chemo, it's important to know that chemo is very tough on someone's heart. And during the stay, her heart rate was consistently over 200, she claimed. She was receiving doxorubicin. Folks in the cancer business call it doxy. It's the red devil. It comes with a warning label. It can't touch your skin. And when you receive it intravenously, you can feel it coursing through your veins like fire. It burns immediately. Rachel would also claim to be sick immediately from the doxy. Now, before my father passed away, he and I spoke about doxy because it was given to him 30 years prior when he had acute myelogenous leukemia. He said it was nearly unbearable. She is playing me at this time, on every nerve, on every emotion. She's not only playing me, but she's playing everyone in my life and all of you that are hearing the story, all of you cancer survivors, anyone that's been touched by cancer. Keep in mind that she used her experiences and knowledge along with some research. It's all allowed her to concoct these lies about her own health and deliberately mislead me. I thought to myself and out loud, if she's in the healthcare business, she's got no business being in front of a patient, ever. She has no business standing at a patient's bedside. They say cancer sucks. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. No, cancer has a new enemy, and its name is Rachel. On the next episode of The Messenger, the Rachel Cancer Scam, Rachel claims that she's ready to love and be loved. Some more background and history on the alleged unwanted and inappropriate contact by men, and what this experience took away from Rachel as a woman. Next time on The Messenger.